All right, good morning. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. Today is December 20th, 2022, and the time is 9:31. Let's begin this morning by inviting Pastor Jeff Swearingen from Florida Church Planners to the podium to give this morning's invocation. Please stand.
Let's pray. Father, as we come to this season of the year, we are reminded of a Savior who came to bring us peace and hope. And Father, I pray in this season that you would restore that peace across our county. For those who are hurting, would you bring healing? Would you show your mercy upon them? And would you bring peace in their lives and remind them of the hope that's found in Jesus? God, for these men who lead us as county commissioners and who serve our county and other offices, I pray that you'd bring them that same peace and wisdom. God, I pray that in these coming weeks, you'd give them some moments where they could rest and find peace and find some moments of joy and happiness with family and friends. And God, would you just continue to work in our county to bring the restoration and healing that's needed. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Well, this morning we do not have any ceremonial presentations, so we'll go right into the recap where we talk about any changes to the agenda. The only change this morning, Commissioners, is that we're going to move item C10 to the administrative agenda at the request of our county administration. So if there's no objection, we'll go ahead and just make that change. Okay, I see no objection to that. Very good. At this time, I'd like to take up the consent agenda. Commissioner Greenwell, do you have anything that you'd like to pull for discussion?
Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Sandelli? No, Commissioner Ruane?
No, sir.
Okay, I have no items that need to be pulled for discussion. Does somebody wish to make a motion to approve?
I gladly will.
Okay. Motion to approve the consent agenda is from Commissioner Ruane, and the second is from Commissioner Sandelli. At this time, I'd like to take public comment on the consent agenda. This is the time to talk about items that were on the consent agenda, items 1 through 25 on today's agenda. Has anyone come to speak in public comment on that? Okay, I see none. So at this time, we'll come back to the board for discussion. Does anybody wish to discuss anything? Seeing none, are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right, at this time, we'll take up the administrative agenda, and let's begin, Mr. DeJarlais, actually with the item we've moved to the administrative agenda, which would be C10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, this item this morning is we're asking you to accept HUD Rapid Reshelter Survivor Housing Grant Funds, and it's not a great deal of money, but I'd like for Mr. Mora to talk with you for just a moment about this is just one more category of spending to help people get back into adequate living space. Mark?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. The administrative item before you accepts Housing and Urban Development Rapid Unsheltered Survivor Housing, also known as RUSH funds, in the amount of $288,673. This funding will provide housing and services to persons displaced by natural disasters, including Hurricane Ian. These funds will be administered by Human and Veteran Services and Catholic Charities. Approximately 19 households will be assisted with shelter, housing, and case management. Staff anticipate additional RUSH funds from HUD in the very near future, providing the ability to assist a much greater number of households. Human Services staff are available if there are any questions.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions for our team? No? Mr. DeJarlais, the only question I have is, could somebody from Human and Veteran Services explain just the process for folks if they have housing needs and think they may be able to take advantage of this? How would they get in touch with us and apply for these?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Mark?
We have Jeannie Sutton, Deputy Director of Human Services, will provide an explanation.
Good morning, Commissioners. For clients to get access to these funds and any of our programs, they need to start by calling our coordinated entry line, which is 239-533-7996. When they call into that phone line, they'll get an assessment that will prioritize their needs and kind of find out what types of assistance will be best for them. And then they will be assigned to a case manager from there and then be provided access to these and our other programs.
So they should still call even if maybe these funds don't apply to them. There might be another program that may help.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. At this time, then, I'll go ahead and call for public comment. Has anyone come to speak in public comment on the acceptance of the HUD Rapid Unsheltered Survivor Housing Grant Funds? Okay, seeing no public comment. Commissioners, does anybody wish to make a motion?
I gladly will.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Ruane. I'll second. Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any further discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right, Mr. DeJarlais, you're recognized for administrative agenda item number 1, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, we're asking you to authorize curbside commercial debris removal generated from Hurricane Ian, and ask Mr. Salyer to make the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. What we are talking about is commercial debris in county rights-of-way that are outside of the catastrophic and extensively damaged areas. If we could go to the next slide, please, we will look at that map. So the shaded-in areas are the catastrophic and extensively damaged areas. We have FEMA approval to remove commercial debris right-of-way in these areas, and we also have approval for what is called expanded commercial debris, meaning that coming from hotels, condos, and apartments. The window for picking up the hotels, condos, and apartments actually closes Wednesday, but we've already completed that mission and we're just doing spot checks now. I want to point out that the third kind of commercial debris removal, which is called CPDR, commercial property debris removal, that is where you go onto private property to get the debris, and that is a state mission. So what we're talking about today is the last category of commercial, which is listed as number 4 there. This is all of the non-shaded areas, and typically this is a responsibility of the property owner. Now, we are anticipating getting some FEMA reimbursement if you authorize us to do this, and the way that has worked in the past is we go ahead, we collect it, we submit for reimbursement. If we can show that it was a public health hazard, FEMA will typically reimburse you for that. I do want to point out that probably not all of this collection will be reimbursed because there are some small, isolated vegetative debris piles that FEMA probably is going to say don't present enough of a public health hazard to be reimbursed. So we will undoubtedly end up absorbing some of the costs of doing this. That said, we're looking at an estimate of $600,000 to pick up this kind of debris in all of the county areas that are unshaded there. And again, we do anticipate getting reimbursed for at least some of that. Try to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Ruane?
So just to expand upon this, this is really a byproduct of the state mission that the state did something that was uncharacteristic where they allowed or afforded the opportunity to pick up debris that we normally wouldn't pick up. That's what they came out and said. So is that where this is what we're talking about?
Commissioner Ruane, I think you are talking about the first 2 categories that are listed there in the shaded areas, and you're correct. The state and FEMA came out quickly and said, go pick up this commercial debris, even though typically commercial debris is the responsibility of the property owner. So now we're left with the part that the state and FEMA have not yet authorized, and that is commercial debris everywhere else, if that makes sense.
So how do you work in conjunction with the state on what is and isn't? And obviously what you're asking for us is you believe that there'll be part of this that'll be reimbursed and part that may not. You want us to be aware of that. It becomes complicated not only for understanding to disseminate exactly what is what, but how does a property owner work within these guidelines as well when they hear something broad like we'll pick up construction debris on private property?
You're exactly right. It's very difficult to convey this message to property owners in a way that makes sense to them. That's why we're seeking authorization just to go ahead and clean it up, because typically that is not going to happen. So what we're suggesting is, well, let's just go get all of it, and we will sort it out on the back end, and we do anticipate getting reimbursed for most of that, but the solid waste fund probably is going to have to bear some of the cost.
I'm 100% in favor of doing this, just as we clearly identify the items that we're talking about. You know, I think we continue to, when Commissioner Hammond and I were up in Tallahassee, just identify the issues that we come across. And when there's, having met with Director Guthrie, you and I, when there's an opportunity to say, okay, this is what your intent is, and we're running into some issues, I think it just affords us the opportunity to make sure if there's additional clarity and or additional funding, since they have stepped up with some FEMA reimbursement. I get the feeling working with Director Guthrie that he has a lot of flexibility and obviously would do that. So as this evolves, I'd love to just understand, where we are with that, because as we've had interactions with him, he consistently says, just tell us what you need. So I want to make sure we do that. Is that a fair representation of when we talk with Director Guthrie?
Yeah. No, I mean, just to kind of tag on to that, Commissioner, I think what was really appreciated when we were in Tallahassee for the special session was the fact that many of the lawmakers and agency heads that we met with said, tell us what the constraints are, tell us what the roadblocks are that you're running into so that we can help you move through them and get your community recovered. And I thought that was, that was amazing to hear that was the attitude when we got up there. And they delivered, they really did.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Sandelli.
Out of sight, out of mind is always a good thing. Congratulations to the team so far for the amount of materials that they've moved. When you start going down to number 4 from the property owners, those materials, can you give us some idea of how much longer that's going to take if we get on this and start taking the stuff away? I think once people have some definitive timeline, which can change, that it makes them feel better that we're moving in the right direction.
Sure. So Commissioner Sandelli, on the commercial right-of-way debris removal that we're talking about right now, specifically in the bulk of unincorporated Lee County, what will happen is the crews will move essentially from west to east. So if you all say yes to this, literally crews will start heading towards all of our corridors in Cape Coral. And they'll take care of those, and then they'll move east through US 41, Colonial, Daniels, et cetera, and then just keep progressing all the way to the Hendry County border. We are coming up on a holiday break, so that will take a little bit of time to get to all of this, but it's all all of this will be gone by January. By the end of January, let me clarify.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir, Mr. DeJoy.
Commissioners, I wish there was a way for me to adequately convey to the general public so they could understand this issue of debris removal. I've always thought that I did a pretty good job of assimilating, large sums of information and have it make sense so that I can talk about it. But this debris removal and who does what under what conditions is, I thank God for, Glenn and some other folks here who, spend a lot of time to understand it. So, I wish there was a way that we could help people understand so they could be more patient with debris removal. It is enormously complex, and the landscape changes from time to time. If there was anything that our legislators and governor could do, and I'm sure it's way above their pay grade, is to help FEMA become better organized and give consistent information about all of this. It is maddening. So it's really easy to understand the confusion that people have or their lack of patience and anger for debris not being all gone by now. It's very difficult, but thank you in anticipation of your approval here. Thank you for this, because this go a long ways to help mitigate some of that.
Mr. Green?
Yeah, I do, Chairman. Thank you. Glenn, we discussed before in the last meeting about starting to set some deadlines with certain communities, saying this is your final date to get everything out. I think with us doing that, and I know you've started to do that, that should obviously help relieve some of the, or get some of the other trucks in other locations that will help those places start to get picked up faster by not having those areas we have to go to every day. So we've started doing that, right? And the public's aware of that. So, and I'm sure we'll continue to add locations as we go here after the first of the year. So I do think that people will start to see in some areas that maybe they feel like they haven't gotten enough attention, there will be trucks available to start going to those locations.
Yes, sir. Thank you for raising that. We've already set those deadlines for Lehigh Acres and Gateway. This week, we will make an announcement asking people to have their final Hurricane Ian storm debris to the curb by January 3rd for a number of additional areas, talking about everything in the southeast of Lee County, Boca Grande. Really large swaths of the county will be encompassed in this announcement this week. And so that really will leave us with only the catastrophically and extensively damaged areas. And as you know, Commissioner Greenwell, homeowners will continue to bring material to the curb as they work with their insurance companies, as they get contractors in, which is taking time. That debris will just continuously flow, and we will just keep circulating and just keep passing those properties and picking it up until it's all gone. But outside of those, so what I'm saying, Commissioner, is outside of evacuation zone A, we are going to make the call that you just said, asking people to have it on the curb no later than January 3rd.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Greenwell, to your point also, we know that your aides do a good job of sending information to us when your office receives a complaint about debris not being picked up. I would just encourage your offices to continue to do that. So if we have inadvertently missed a road in a neighborhood somewhere, that we can take care of it.
Commissioner Sandelli.
One more thing, I'm sure after the holidays, I know I'm scheduled to speak at a couple of different events, and I think it's important that people understand that this whole process, that there's the pickup, then there's the debris sites, then there's the final resting place, so on and so forth. So it's not just you go through and it's gone. So I think that's the first part. And I think that once, for instance, I had a couple conversations out at the site on Coconut, with some of the neighbors out there. Once they understand, and I had the team tell me approximately when this will be cleared. If I give them a date, and stuff like that, and it's just a little bit generous, and stuff like that, they feel pretty good about it. I know there's an end date, and that's what I was alluding to before. So what's the extent of this piece? We extend that date out, and I think people feel like somebody's giving some guidance, which helps.
Good stuff. Commissioner Ruane.
And consistent with, I think, what both commissioners had indicated, as we move resources from point A to point B, it gives us an opportunity to let our constituents know, our districts know. It's no secret on the coastal areas how hard we were hit, and we continue to struggle with just trying to make sure we get information to them. And I think it would be very much embraced if we demonstrated how we're closing certain areas and we have other additional resources, and there is some sign of additional hope that hopefully can give some type of calmness to them and at least some clarity in the future. That's what I'm looking for.
Very good. At this time, does somebody wish to make a motion?
I gladly will.
Motion for approval from Commissioner
second.
Ruane, second from Commissioner Greenwell. Very good. At this time, I'd like to call for public comment. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the motion that's on the floor? Okay. Let's go with the gentleman in the back who stood up first, and then Mr. Ballard, I'll get you second. Good morning, sir. Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, good morning. My name is Robert Neild. I have the good fortune to live in Cape Coral, and even better fortune to represent 15 owners in a Summerlin South Commercial Owners Park that is located at the southeast corner of Winkler and Summerlin. After the hurricane, administration is exactly right. My owners dutifully brought all their debris to the curb, expecting that there would be some trucks coming by to collect it. To my dismay, we are private roads. We maintain our roads. We maintain our surface water management. We maintain all those things. We're an economic driver for the county as well as the country. Small business is the backbone of economic drivers. We still have our debris on the curb waiting for what appears to be number 3, the CPDR removal from private property, which, as I learned this morning, is a state issue. But I would encourage you not only to approve the motion before you, but also to push things up towards the state and see if you can get them to cooperate. I have executed right of entry forms so that crews knew they had permission to participate in the debris pickup. But like I say, we're still waiting on debris pickup in our park. So I encourage you to vote for this motion and to use your influence to get the state to continue to pick up in debris-strewn areas like ours. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment this morning. Mr. Ballard?
Morning, Commissioner. Danny Ballard, President of Norfolk Myers Civic. And there's nothing that we can do, you all can do for this one, but something for if we ever have another disaster like this. One of the big issues that has come to light where most of the commercial corridor areas, I guess is a good way to put it, and they put their debris out at the curb. That's where the power line easement is, and I've watched these trucks. They have really struggled because where they set up there to get the boom to get to it, the power lines are becoming a major problem. And some of them are not being able to pick it up. They're having to now get a skid steer to push the stuff out from under the power lines where the commercial trucks can pick it up. So that is something that I've noticed out of this disaster. There's something we need to look at for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All right, anybody else wish to speak in public comment on the motion before us? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment back to the board for discussion. Any further discussion on the item, commissioners? Okay, seeing none, are there any objections to the motion? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right, and administrative agenda item number 2, Mr. County Manager, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're asking you to approve a Florida Department of Emergency Management Memorandum of Understanding for utilities-related damage incurred from Hurricane Ian. Would ask Mr. Flores to make the presentation, please. Paul?
Thank you, Roger. Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, Paul Flores, Utilities Deputy Director. Today, I have the privilege to present administrative item number 2, which is to approve a memorandum of understanding and addendum with the Florida Department of Emergency Management, Tetra Tech, and Lee County. Tetra Tech is a consulting and engineering firm that specializes in water, wastewater utilities, and provides emergency management services. After Hurricane Ian, Tetra Tech was tasked by the state to conduct site assessments, identify temporary repairs, purchase equipment, and assist water and wastewater utilities back to operational state. Currently, Tetra Tech is working on documenting utilities damage assessments, which is required by FEMA to get FEMA reimbursement. I wanted to credit and thank Kevin Guthrie, Director of FDEM, and his team for being able to assist Lee County utilities. These services were also extended to other utilities throughout the county as well. To our knowledge, this was the first time that the state has initiated emergency services for utilities, for water and wastewater. It was very much appreciated to have access to additional resources and support. With your approval, this agenda item ratifies the agreement with the state. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm available to answer any questions.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions at all? No? Mr. Flores, you gave me a great explanation in the aftermath of the storm about what happened. I think I can speak for myself that I was surprised to see that we lost the water pressure that we lost and weren't able to provide water in areas where, I just hadn't considered that the water was going to go down on our utilities. And you explained to me what broke and why it happened. Could you give us that plain English explanation?
Absolutely, Chairman. So your home plumbing are permanent fixtures. So what we experienced with storm surge is that those homes were being destroyed and moved, which, plumbing is not flexible or cannot bend, so it broke those lines. So we had so much water going out that we could not meet that demand. At some point, we were pushing out about 20,000 gallons per minute, but our water plants could only produce 14,000. So that deficit led us to a point where we could not pressurize our system, which we lost our pressure. But it only took us a few days, and I had to commend our distribution team and all of Lee County Utilities for all their assistance to get that pressure back up. And within 12 days, we were able to lift our boil water notice. So that was a great accomplishment, and very much proud and thankful for our team that we have here in Lee County.
I echo your compliments to the team too. Very impressive to see them get that back up. And, you know, I guess what made their job even tougher was the loss of the internet and the power as well. Typically, we could use our internet system, which monitors, I guess, our utilities to tell us where the breaks were. But of course, in the aftermath of the storm, that was down as well. So
Everything was down.
had to go old school, I guess.
Absolutely, but it took a lot of forces, and we had a lot of resources, even through the EOC and Sandra's team and FDEM and of course, county leadership. With all their support, we were able to achieve some major accomplishments in a short period of time.
Yeah, thank you very much for the work that you all did, and happy to support this item for you too. So,
Very good, thank you.
all right, at this time, does anybody wish to make a motion?
I gladly will.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Ruane and a second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have anybody who's come to speak in public comment on this item today? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any further discussion, commissioners? Okay, seeing none, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right. At this time, Mr. County Manager, do we have any walk-ons or carryovers?
No, sir, we do not.
None today, okay. Let's move to commissioner items. We'll do appointments after this. Commissioner Greenwell, do you have any commissioner items to discuss? None today? None today for Mr. Sandelli?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ruane, you're recognized.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Just wanted to give you an opportunity to see a 8-page slide of what a website might look like. I'm pleased to provide the board with an update and obviously trying to launch the task force. You know, the membership obviously is scheduled, and we would like to try to see us do this, you know, in January. So, you know, the first page gives us an imagery that we all saw in December 6th. It kind of gives us exactly what that might look like, have secured these assets. It certainly is a starting point. I think it's really important, and we all talked about just how essential it is to make sure that we communicate with the business leaders, communicate with our public, and understand all that's necessary. You know, the second page is really about resiliently and trying to have that as our tagline to make sure people understand that. You know, in page 3, the imagery and the backdrop of the landing page is navigated for information. It's really what it is, a clear invitation for people to share. Sharing this website landing page, you know, obviously allows everyone to interact, and that's what really we're looking for as far as I'm concerned in that regard. Page 4 is an opportunity to post current achievements, no different than what we've done with debris, no different than what we've done with a dashboard type of reality of what we have gone out, what opportunities there were. Many of us were at the signing on Friday. There was $750 million signed. So as we continue to understand what the dollars are, what we're able to do, issues we have, there's a lot of confusion that came, you know, with this. Both Commissioner Hammond and I were up there, and there was some toll money that was obviously addressed. And you know, talking to Senator Martin, said there's going to be a $500 million bill just for FDOT, and it'll cover tolls. So there's more things to come. We talked about revenue replacement. That's coming as well, but it's premature at the moment because we don't know exactly what that looks like. What's our holes? What's not? How do we fill them in? But I envision this page trying to populate it so we have an understanding. If there's anything that I think we consistently heard up in Tallahassee is, as we were up there, when session begins with 413 cities coming, 67 counties, it's really important to streamline. That's why the House has a resiliency side. That's why the Senate has a resiliency side. And I think we funnel through this. It's our, you know, intent certainly to have that. That's why the elected officials, as now they are seeing the merits, Roger had the opportunity to talk to different county city managers and say, okay, revenue replaces a number. It's a lot easier to say, okay, what that number looks like. So I just want to, you know, obviously say and show you an example of what this all looks like, give you an update on where we are and how this, you know, potentially could roll out. I mean, that was really just a quick overview of where we are and where we're trying to go. So that's really what I was hoping to obviously just share with you as we're trying to get this up to be more robust, to have the opportunity to do this and work.
Thank you for the update, Commissioner Ruane. Commissioners, any discussion or questions? No?
No, I'd just like to thank you, Mr. Chairman and Kevin, for going to Tallahassee and continue to pursue this at that level too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Does that conclude your commissioner items?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ruane? All right, very good. And, the only thing, I didn't advertise a commissioner item, and I don't have one, but just wanted to echo again, what a good trip we had during special session. I think it was beneficial for us to go up during the special session as opposed to during the regular session, which will go up during that too. But typically during a regular session in Tallahassee, it's 60 days, it's very fast. And you only, if you can get 10 minutes with a legislator in his office or her office, you're lucky. With the special session, there wasn't as big of a crowd up there, so we got a chance to go up and build some relationships with the speaker and House leadership, and also with the president of the Senate and their leadership as well. And so I felt the performance of our new lobby team was actually very good. They helped get us the right meetings with the right people. And I also felt that the story we told was a good story that it seemed that Tallahassee was willing to listen to, and that is that, Lee County is part of Florida's growth story. When you look at the pandemic and what it did to the economy, right, we stayed open here in Lee County. And because of that, we saw our airport recover its passenger counts faster than any other airport in the United States of America. We saw 25,000 people move here over the course of the last 12 months. We saw, when I first was a Tourist Development Council chairman back in 2015, we were hoping to get to $3 billion in tourist spending. Last year, we had $5.5 billion in tourist spending and market. So we saw our economy really surge and grow, and Florida, of course, benefited from that. We were economically significant, I think, to the state of Florida's success. And our message to the lawmakers was, it's not normal for us to be up here asking for money. We really don't ask for a lot in Lee County, but we have to this year. And their message back was, this is your year to ask. We're here to support you. We've been through storms like this in our communities, and we're ready to support Lee County this year. So I think all in all, it was a great special session and great meetings that we had.
I couldn't agree with you more, Commissioner, and honestly continue to make the case that this was an investment, and a worthwhile investment in Lee County to allow us the opportunity for some assistance, but then obviously to see all the revenues start to pick back up and start to really, have the economic impact, get jobs back, and have people back. So I think they understood the message clearly. I was very happy with their meetings, as you had indicated, and I commend staff for having the legislative lobbying team that we had. It was great.
Very good. All right, at this time, I'll move to committee appointments. Commissioner Greenwell, do you have any appointments to make?
Chairman, I do not.
Okay, none this morning. Commissioner Sandelli? Commissioner Ruane?
No, sir.
Okay, I have two appointments to make this morning. I'll need a motion and a second on these. I'd like to make a new appointment of Dan Allers, the mayor of Fort Myers Beach, to the Tourist Development Council. And I'd like to appoint Councilman Bill Steinke to the Tourist Development Council on behalf of Cape Coral.
I'll move.
Okay, we have the motion from Commissioner Ruane and the second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any discussion on that? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right, that concludes committee appointments. Mr. County Manager, you're recognized for any items or updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is all that we have for you today. Just would like to wish the commission and county employees and everyone who's living in Lee County a Merry Christmas. And as we head into this holiday weekend, to everyone to be careful, be safe, but make sure to slow down, spend time with their families. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. County Manager. And Mr. County Attorney, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the interest of brevity, we would just like to echo the county manager's comments and wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. County Attorney. At this time, I will now call for public presentation of matters by citizens. I have two cards that have been turned in this morning. The first is from Dawn Kunsikowski. I hope I said that correctly. And then after Dawn will be William Bronson.
And it's Dawn Konsikowski, and I'm representing the board of Bonita Beach subdivision. And I sent an email to everybody on Friday. I won't go into much detail on that, and I have another matter I'd like to bring up. About the email on Friday concerning Bonita Beach subdivision, the reclaiming of each property owner's beach sand that was washed onto Hickory Boulevard, and our concerns with the scraping off of more than 4 feet of the protective sand ridge located on private property. Please ensure that we do not have to spend $10,000 to $30,000 to truck in special sand from elsewhere when our sand just washed across the road and we were willing to move it back, but we were stopped by the county because they wanted to clean it first. In addition, I would like to ask the commissioners to restore the protections of the Bonita Beach accesses that were promised in Resolution 4410F adopted in 1970. Since that time, the county and Bonita Beach have suffered several severe storms. Our association board members have met with our commissioners and representatives and even the Lee County Sheriff legal team to try to get the protections restored as promised in Resolution 4410F. Every time we made some headway, it was one emergency after another, and we were continually asked to wait, which we understood and did as asked and waited. Now that several of the accesses need major restoration, it would make sense to be sure the promises of 4410F that have been destroyed over the past 20-plus years all be restored at this time. I have made a copy of the resolution for each of you and for the record. I have all the history and backup as to how and why this resolution was drawn up and passed unanimously. I would like to sit down with the appropriate representatives prior to any restoration work to our beach access begins to ensure that all promises are incorporated in that restoration. I have new signage ideas that we created based on the resolution and on problems the private property owners and Lee Sheriff's deputies have encountered over the past several years. I will follow up with an email to you of the proposed educational signage ideas. Collier County has 57 public access points along a 34-mile stretch of coastline, an average of only one every half mile. Lee County has 98 public beach accesses along 47 miles of coastline, an average of one every half mile. Compared to Bonita Beach subdivision that has offered 10 public accesses within 2.5 miles of coastline, an average of 4 times the average public beach accesses of the entire counties of Collier and Lee. Collier County has a population of more than 7 times the population of Bonita, and Lee County has a population of more than 13 times, yet our subdivision supplies 4 times more beach access than the average throughout the 2 entire counties. In addition, the Florida Coastal Management Agency identified 1,692 public access points for the entire state of Florida. This corresponds to about 1 public access for every 5 miles of shoreline. Bonita Beach is...
Could you wrap it up real quick?
I can.
Time has expired.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just, yeah, give us that one last line here, and then we'll
Okay.
ask some questions on your behalf.
I've been a widow for the past few years and live close to a beach access. I have had rude tourists come onto my porch, use my outdoor shower, steal my fire pits and furniture from my backyard, and even threaten me when I have asked them to leave. And yes, I have had to call the sheriff on more than one occasion. Okay. These are some of the very crimes that Resolution 4410F would prevent. And if we could get our sand back, because our island is the first line of protection for the mainland, and
Great.
Merry Christmas. Thank you, and I'm sorry I took
We
so
got
long.
the picture. Yes, thank you, Ms. Konzakowski. I appreciate you coming this morning. Mr. Bronson, William Bronson. Morning, sir.
Good morning and happy holidays. I'm Will Bronson. I live in Lehigh Acres, and a few years ago I started thinking long and hard about what we could do to help our public schools, and I gathered a group of people together, and we essentially brainstormed for a long time and came up with what I thought was a pretty good idea, and that's essentially to hire retired teachers on a part-time basis and pay them a reasonable amount of money to work as teacher assistants in the public schools. As you know, they have major staffing issues, and a lot of that is due to the large attrition of current teachers, and we're trying to figure out a way to keep them from looking at other ways, easier ways to make a living than teaching in the schools full-time. But we know that our retired people don't want to work full-time, but they would be willing to work 10 or 20 hours a week for pay. And so our job is basically to raise money because we don't want to burden the already burdened school district with additional costs, but we feel that there's a lot of money out there that we could raise to pay our senior citizens to do what we like to call the grandparent effect. So it would help 3 generations. It would help seniors have meaningful employment, a break from their pickleball or golf or tennis, and also it will help these struggling teachers, and it will also help, obviously, the students. In fact, the University of Chicago, you may have read in the paper, just started an $18 million study as to how they can better help, and they came to the conclusion that would be what they call high dosage tutoring, which is essentially what our seniors would be doing in the classroom. So I brought some literature that I'll leave for the commissioners, and I solicit your ideas, any way you can help us to make this work. We've met twice with the new superintendent. He said to be ready to start our pilot project in January with 10 teachers, and we hope that'll grow quickly with the help of the community and the public-private partnership we're wanting to create. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bronson. I appreciate your time, and we have your material, and I assume if it has your contact information on it, we'll give you a call if we have any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Or you can find me at the stadium on Monday and Wednesday mornings with
Excellent.
with a bunch of Canadians, mostly, that like to use that facility, as do I.
Well, thanks for
Thank
your
you very
heart for our
much,
children and
Merry
our
Christmas.
teachers. Appreciate that. All right. Has anyone else come to speak in public comment this morning? Mr. Ballard?
Yes, sir. 22 has definitely been a challenging year, and I want to compliment the Board of Commissioners, County Attorney, his staff, Roger, your staff, all of the department heads. They have done a tremendous job. And with that being said, I'd like to wish all of you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and 23 has definitely got to be better.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ballard. If there's no one further who's come to speak in public presentation of matters by citizens, then I'll close public comment. And is there any other business before us, Mr. County Manager?
No, sir, thank you.
All right, seeing none, then I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we will be back. We are adjourned.